Okay, it's a pre-election dance, a bit of shadow boxing. It's a fight over who's the most credible party in person to run the New Zealand economy. Chris Luxon says his approach is so successful and he's so confident in what he's doing that he's doubling down on it. Meanwhile, Chris Hipkins says Luxon ran his victory lap too early and he's flopped. He's even gone as far as saying Nationals had nothing to do with lowering inflation and interest rates. Whew, it's a war of words. So why is Hipkins now refusing to say what he'd do? What does he stand for? What does Labour stand for? What would he roll out as policy? Is he all mouth and no trousers? It doesn't bear thinking about that image, does it? So let's go.
Are we paying these people to front up, or are we paying them to fly to Wellington to eat their lunch? Should you really lose your career for refusing to take part in a 90-minute lesson about Māori culture? This government doesn't actually have any idea how to get economic growth. Show us what you made of, Prime Minister.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan, Garner.
Okay, welcome to the program. You're with the Editor-in-Chief. I'm Duncan, Garner. Good evening, everyone. Nice to have you along. Please subscribe. Always helps us stay here. That's the sort of name of the game, isn't it? The gloves are off. Who's the best party to run the economy? It all kicked off with the price of butter, didn't it? And Nicola Willis, the Finance Minister, I think naively meeting with Fonterra in her Beehive office, has suggested that perhaps to voters she could somehow move the price of butter. She can't. But it suddenly highlighted that cost of living again and just what National has or hasn't done. So behind closed doors, National decides, let's go down and tell our story. What we have done for the cost of living. We've brought it down. Outwardly defensive, clearly sensitive to criticism has done Jack. Chippy must have spooked them. So over 13 minutes, National goes down and reads a list of 22 policies that it says is making your life easier. Maybe Hipkins has spooked them. Or maybe Hipkins under pressure can't say what he'd do differently. In fact, he can beg them, but he can't really propose anything. So let's go.
It's the Slam Dunk.
Okay, National came to power promising to fix the escalating cost of living crisis. It promised that life would get easier for you. Inflation was over 7%. You remember this? A couple of years ago. The highest in 35 years. Interest rates were stubbornly high. Everything felt costly because it was. So National pledged to fix it, to make your life easier. And 2 years later, has National delivered? That's the big question now. Well, not if you're at the netball on the weekend where the PM was booed by the crowd. Now, that's a real sign that he's struggling to convince voters that he's got the answers, right? He's not popular. If this is the beginning of the good times, then why does it still feel so tough? Many voters say they don't feel like it's got better. The latest poll reflects that too, with Labour now ahead of National. And an election is now looming next year, so the runway's suddenly getting shorter. And all this, I think, spooked National into this latest war of words with Labour's Chris Hipkins. More on his rather extraordinary claims shortly, but plenty of Kiwis argue life is still tough and unemployment has increased. We've seen that. Jobs really hard to come by and high prices have been locked in, right? And National's been too busy giving, this is the opposition argument, National's been too busy giving tax breaks to tobacco companies, tax breaks to landlords. They say the biggest tax cuts went to the rich, and now Christopher Luxon has just given directors of Crown-owned companies and organisations a huge pay increase. Through massively inflated director fees, some have increased by a staggering 80%. While staff in the public sector continue to lose their jobs, nurses face tight pay increases under the rate of inflation. But Luxon and Nicola Willis say it's unfair to characterise the government in that light. And they took this highly unusual step in the last 24 hours of fronting together after the cabinet meeting to defend their record and to remind people what they've done. It was a 13-minute sermon listing 22 policies that they've brought in to ease the cost of living and to increase wages. Some of it's clutching at straws. It was a real sign that they're feeling the pressure, and they have spent all year trying to breathe life into the stagnant economy, and they're running out of time waiting for it to kick in. And somehow, frickin' Hipkins has stayed popular all this time. Enough to now be getting under their skin. And also on top of the polls.
Scrapping the last government's plan to increase petrol taxes by 12 cents a litre over 3 years. Scrapping the Auckland regional fuel tax. Increasing rates rebates for seniors and extending them up to 66,000 more super gold card holders. Increasing working for families support for low to middle income families. And extending maximum prescription lengths from 3 to 12 months.
All up, it was a 13-minute speech from the throne, listing all those policies that they've brought in to ease the cost of living and increase wages. They say it's taking time to clean up Labour's wasteful spending, their mess. They simply have read this list of policies that they've introduced to help you. Frickin' Hipkins reckons nothing is working.
Well, blame is all they have. I mean, all of the things that they have been doing have turned to custard. This time last year, Christopher Luxon and Nicola Willis were doing a victory lap and saying that we'd turned the corner and everything was getting better and New Zealanders had brighter days ahead to look forward to. And yet over the last year, since they declared victory, I think for most Kiwi families, things have felt like they're going backward.
The National listed what it's done, right? The modest tax cuts that it claims amount to about $60 a week into the average pocket. Have you seen $60 a week? Inflation's fallen to 2.7%, was 7.2. Interest rates are rapidly dropping as a result, as we know. So mortgages are cheaper and easier to service. National says that's happened because they're in office. It was their influence. It even mentioned taking the fees off the swipe and going the debit cards in the last 24 hours. But they won't come into effect until next year, so that's not easing the pressure. Never mind. Yet on inflation and interest rates, Hipkins has come out wildly swinging at this claim, saying it was on its way down anyway when he was in office. So he'd already started to see it come down. Oh, he's taking credit. Aren't they ridiculous? Aren't they just wits? He's taking credit for when he was in office, interest rates and inflation were coming down. It's all cyclical here. There's nothing to do with politics. Oh, yeah. And nothing to do with Nationals policies at all.
Inflation was coming back down. You know, the trajectory of inflation and the trajectory of interest rates is what was being forecast before the election. The current government have had very little to do with that. That was largely the work of the Reserve Bank hiking up interest rates that actually brought inflation back down.
Yet Hipkins actually went further, and he made an ass of himself, I reckon, by saying this government has contributed to inflation through its policies. But it's been taking money out of government spending. You may also recall Hipkins, Jacinda Ardern and Grant Robertson distancing themselves from high inflation when they were in office, saying that inflation was high because of international prices, not because of what the government was doing. They said it doesn't happen like that. It happens because of international prices. Yet here's Hipkins now saying it's because of this government. He's changed his tune, hasn't he? Inflation is now driven by the government and its decisions. Which one is it, Chris? You're far too selective. Politicians, they always are. That's why the editor-in-chief is here to call bullshit every time. But the elephant in the room is a huge one. It's massive. You can't see it. It's just over here. It's massive. And it's one often brought up here in the comment sections that here on YouTube and everything. And that's the makeup of a centre-left government with Labour, Greens and Te Pāti Māori. This is what people aren't talking about yet. How long would that last? What would their policy mix look like? The Greens want $88 billion in new taxes. Te Pāti Māori don't so much want co-governance, they want sole governance, where, yes, you're out, white guy's out. What would be their price? What would be their policy? I mean, they're all activists and activism and protest, but what do you stand for apart from that hot air? What's your price of being in the government? Then there's Labour, which is a drift-on policy and refusing to engage until the election campaign next year on what it might actually come up with as a policy prescription. We can't wait that long.
What would be different under a Labour government?
Well, I think we need to get people back to work. I think that's one of the first priorities for our next government.
How would you do that?
Is making sure, well, we're going to set out more policy closer to the election. Right now, it's the current government who are in office and they've still got another year to a year and a half to go before the next election. And I think New Zealanders are looking to them for answers to the problems that they're making worse, not better.
Well, that's an easy way out though, isn't it?
Well, I don't want to be in a position that the National Party was in where a whole lot of the promises they made before the election seem to have just disappeared.
And there it is. He's got no idea what to propose. Radio New Zealand's Ingrid Hipkins presses him, and he's a blank.
If you've got good ideas you think would solve the problem, why not get on to them now? I'm not talking about promises you can't keep. I'm talking about promises you can keep.
Well, I think if you look at what the National Party did in opposition, they only did that once, and that was a big tax cut promise where they promised to cut the top personal tax rate, and then they basically said before the election, oh no, we're not actually going to do that. So again, I don't want to be setting a standard for any political parties, including our own, that we're not willing to meet after the election.
And again, I'm saying, what are the policies that you would be prepared to meet?
Well, look, I wouldn't be doing a lot of what the current government are doing. I wouldn't be hiking up directors' fees, for example, by 80% at a time when you're telling nurses and teachers that they have to settle for pay increases that are below the rate of inflation, i.e. a real terms pay cut.
Okay.
I'd be focused on making sure that people can make ends meet.
What would you be doing differently? I know that the directors thing, we haven't gotten into that this morning, but he was saying that it's because the public and private sectors are out of whack, and so that's a rebalancing. But in terms of real things that our listeners are going to listen to here and say, yeah, that's a great idea, what have you got?
Well, we could make sure that the government's actually spending the money that it says it's spending, because in areas like capital, for example, so schools, hospitals, house builds, the government's spending less money than it says that it's spending.
I'm going to stop him there. Stop there. Hipkins has decided you won't know what they stand for until much closer to the next election, potentially 6 weeks out. That's because the policies are controversial. Not everyone in Labour is on board, and the public might be turned off, you see. And Hipkins is sort of popular right now, so doing nothing is bizarrely working. So why ruin it with some policy that people won't like? Will they have another go to wealth tax, capital gains tax? They have so many mixed messages in this space, don't they? And is there anyone capable of being in cabinet from the Greens? Chloe Swarbrick? Well, her command of her own budget was woeful. It was like a discussion document, really. She said, she didn't know much, but she was happy to hear from Kiwis about their views of what was in their policy and what could work. Imagine that in cabinet. We're about to make a big decision. We've made it. I'm not there really stuck on it, so I'll just ask you what your feelings are towards it. God. I still say Labour's long-term issues to Party Māori. Angry, no record whatsoever of advancing policy for Māori in this term. They can run a good protest, pose everything and be angry, but can they sit in cabinet and run the country? They could barely show up in Parliament. On the economy, Hipkins is hiding behind getting away with saying nothing. But that won't and can't last. It's not sustainable. There's a standoff going on, folks, between the two big parties over the economy. National promised big, and we're still waiting, while many of us feel Labour got us into this, and they're miles away from being credible enough to actually be given the responsibility again. The fact they're so close to making it back shows how deluded their thinking is.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Right, there we go. Bit of a mouthful, but we got it out there, didn't we? It's great. I mean, and this is the thing. I was like, it all comes down to that, mate. It comes down to the economy and whether people feel safe and secure in their jobs, whether they've got a job. The rest of it's just hot air and bullshit and noise, isn't it? Really, because it comes down to if you got money in your pocket, eh?
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
you know.
And right now we don't.
You really feel that now, mate. There's not. You feel like there's a lot less money in the economy, eh? You know, I was at the.
You go to the supermarket and you walk around and you're kind of like, ooh. Every time.
Yeah. I was at the mall getting Buster a present for his birthday. And the guy in this jewellery shop says to me, I actually asked him, how's the economy and how things? He goes, lots of people around, no one's spending. So everyone's there, but no one's actually handing out the dosh. Anyway, there's letters there. There's one that's come in there on the on that train service, Tauranga, Hamilton, Auckland.
Yes. Yeah, the response to your piece about the Greens' idea for a train service around the triangle, the Golden Triangle, as they say.
Yep.
It's from James. He says, you need to push this as much as you can. I don't go to Tauranga as much as I used to, but when I was growing up, it was like a second home, 3 or 4 times a year visiting, and for most of my life, nearly 45 years. It's been a rat race. Anything that can alleviate this would be great. My auntie and uncle live in Omakaroa, and they know all too well how long it takes to get into the city, but they have lived in Tauranga for over 40 years, so they're just used to the traffic. James.
It's amazing, eh? It's not a huge town as far as the world goes. As you know, it's I think it might be a couple 100,000. Max?
Yeah. No, not big at all. Not big at all. Beautiful, but not big.
It's nice, yes. Yeah, it's kind of like our Gold Coast, you know, and retirement homes. But how can we fuck that up? How can we get 200,000 people wrong? Why do we have these massive traffic jams that's almost on a par with Auckland, if not worse? 200,000 people.
Yeah.
We really have done it badly, eh? We've just built these towns ad hoc. Oh, we'll put that here, that there, and then suddenly you got a basket case.
Yeah, and it's like I went to Tauranga last year. When would it have been? Middle of the year, July-ish, about this time last year. And I feel like at the time I didn't really consider it because I'd been in Auckland and so traffic was normal. But you get into Tauranga and the traffic is fine. But it's when you're in the outskirts, it's when you're getting into onto the motorway, the traffic there is just shocking.
Mate, I came in there. I was coming in there about 5 o'clock one evening over the Kaimais and coming in to host this thing, and it took me an hour and 10 minutes the last 10 Ks. It's not, when you talk about not being productive in New Zealand, that's not productive, sitting in a car, waiting to get...
Yep.
It's only a small town.
It's bad for the environment too,
Totally.
All those cars just idling there, it's just... Yeah, it's bad.
It's just bad, mate. It's shit. So, and you spend heaps of time in a car. So you might do 2 hours a day. So there's suddenly 10 hours a week and 40 hours a month. And there's another, it's a whole week's work.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Like that. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's okay. We're not going there then. Do you know in Tauranga they have got the proposal is that they will build the big highway into Tauranga in 2050. They'll start in 2050. People are going to die waiting. 2050. I mean, I'll be 103. Anyway, that's us, folks. Thanks for your feedback. Thanks for your support. Get in touch with our social media. We see everything. Duncan Garner podcast, TikTok, Instagram, flick us an email. Duncan at Rover. Isaac, thank you, brother. All good, mate. We'll do it tomorrow. Remember, life's no dress rehearsal, no curtain raiser. This is it. We live in one of the best places on earth. So let's get the gloves off. Just joking. Run it straight. No way, whatever. Have a great day. Take care, folks.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.